Title of the talk is ID theft. If we really want to be a stickler about it, there's really no such thing as ID theft because you still have your identity. Nobody can take, right? If somebody steals your wallet, they have your wallet and you don't. That's theft. If somebody steals your identity, well, they're not really stealing it. They're kind of borrowing it, using it in a bad way. So it's really, technically speaking, identity fraud, and we really define it as being any of these issues where somebody wrongfully obtains your data and uses it. So kind of as I mentioned before, there's a lot of different ways that this happens. And if you look at this slide, so we're on slide 8, in particular, if you look at the things down the left column, right, those are all physical, what we call IRL, in real life, right? Dumpster diving, right? What do you throw out? What's in your garbage? There have been a lot of large-scale data thefts that have occurred through dumpster diving. There's an article, I'm sure I got it linked somewhere, where they're talking about how papers were blowing down the road with social security numbers, account information, because quite often businesses close, or even if they don't close, people are just not careful about data in any form, and that's really a core problem there. But your mailbox, right? You go in the morning, you leave for work, you stick a bunch of bills in the mailbox, so they've got your check with your routing number and your account number and your signature and your billing information all sitting in this highly protected mailbox, right? Because it's with the armed guard, right? Locked mailbox. So that's just sitting there. Obviously, I'm kidding for those on the phone. So, right, that's just sitting there. And there was a scam. It doesn't seem to happen quite as much as it used to be, but they would just sort of wait for all the cars to go out of the neighborhood, and then just drive mailbox by mailbox and grab all the stuff, and then you can commit check fraud. You could do all kinds of stuff. Because when you have checks, I don't know that we'll specifically talk about this, but all that matters. So if you have a check, who it's written out to, meaningless. Who signs it, meaningless. What really matters is the amount of money, which of course could be altered, the routing number, and the account number. So if the routing number is legit and the account number has enough money in it to cover the dollar amount, anybody can cash any check, and nobody's looking. So checks are not so great. When people worry about, like, should I be doing things online? Should I be using credit cards? Checks are no bargain either. And this whole idea of identity fraud has been around a lot longer than the internet or credit cards or anything else for that matter. So this is a long-term problem. Right now, I just wanted to, before we get into stuff too deeply, if any of you just recently found out that you are the victim of identity fraud, leave now and do this. Because time is really of the essence. It really is important. You need to establish a paper trail and a timestamp trail that shows that you are taking measures to clean this up. So I mentioned, contact one of the 3 major credit bureaus. We'll go into a little bit more detail on this in a moment. There's 3 major credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and something else, whatever they are. It's all in your handouts and in your information. You only have to contact one, and they have to contact the other 2, but you got to get that on there right away. And you can put a freeze. Minnesota state law allows you to put a freeze on your credit account there. That way, if somebody tries to establish new credit in your name, they have to actually physically contact you to okay that. So that's good. Close any accounts if you find any. So right now, I just wanted to, before we get into stuff too deeply, if any of you just recently found out that you are the victim of identity fraud, leave now and do this. Because time is really of the essence. It really is important. You need to establish a paper trail and a timestamp trail that shows that you are taking measures to clean this up. So I mentioned, contact one of the 3 major credit bureaus. We'll go into a little bit more detail on this in a moment. There's 3 major credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and something else, whatever they are. It's all in your handouts and in your information. You only have to contact one, and they have to contact the other 2, but you got to get that on there right away. And you can put a freeze. Minnesota state law allows you to put a freeze on your credit account there. That way, if somebody tries to establish new credit in your name, they have to actually physically contact you to okay that. So that's good. Close any accounts if you find any. If you know they're abusing a credit card, call them up, get it closed. File a police report. The police will not care, but it is an established timestamp, and you're trying to create a paper documentation trail that shows you're taking steps. In general, law enforcement is not really interested, so but we are trying to establish this paper trail that shows that you are taking measures, because you may need to be able to prove that at a later date. And you do file a complaint with the FTC, and again, they're not going to do anything about it, but it adds to the numbers because it's important that we keep this issue front and center in our lawmakers' minds. questions on that? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say to you, if you do think your identity has been stolen, leave right now and
Yep.
go call.
Go do it.
So in my situation, I found out within half an hour. I called my Visa card. The woman who had stolen my purse had already charged 3 things at Target. And then, it was like within half an hour,
Yeah.
I called the police, and you need the police report number, because then later on when I was getting a false bills, then people, oh, did you file a police report? What's
Yep.
the number? And then they called the police.
Exactly. It's about establishing that credible
that process,
trail
yeah.
and everything. So now these are trusted third parties, and it proves that you're taking those kinds of measures. And this, with potential liability, I mean, we don't know where they may go, and there's all kinds of vectors that maybe we don't even know about yet. So you want to be able to prove what's you and what's not you. So let's talk about protection steps that you can take. So first of all, have you ever gone to the store and you want to buy something? Okay, what's your name? What's your address? What's your zip code? They start asking you all these questions. Why do they need this information? They don't need this information. It's valuable to the person who's asking because it builds demographics. Stores, retail outfits like to collect as much information on you as possible. But they don't need that. Social Security number in particular. So the Social Security number in the United States is basically a tax ID. So who needs your Social Security number? Anybody who pays you, right? So Fairview needs your Social Security number. You cannot work for Fairview if you don't give up your Social Security number. That's how it works. You have to put it on your tax return. There are certain other instances where there might be a financial transaction involved. For example, receiving medical care, they may ask you. So there's certain circumstances where you have no choice and you have to give up that Social Security number. And then there's hundreds of others where people are going to ask you, and the average person just, somebody asked me, so I'm going to give it to them. Ask them why. Why do you need that? And feel free to argue with them. At the very least, you'll have a little fun. You may have to give it up in the end, but at least you should have some fun, and you should get something in return for that. But really, who's asking, and why do they need the information? And 9 times out of 10, they really, really don't. So here's a big one. You're at home and you get a call, right? And somebody starts asking you all these questions. Who are these people? They may say they're your bank. They may say they're your credit card company. But if they're your bank or they're your credit card company, they already know the answers, right? So they don't need to ask you these questions. They should be able to ask you maybe a different question that's really simple that will allow you to allow them to identify you. But they called you at a phone number that they had on record, right? So you're already kind of pre-authenticated as far as they're concerned. But if they're asking all these questions, what's the deal exactly? So when somebody calls you up at home, you don't give them information. If they say they're the fraud department, whoever they are, you say, thank you very much. Can I get your name? And what company are you calling from? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to call you back in just a moment. Hang up. If it's a credit card, pull out that credit card number, the credit card, flip it over, call the number on the back, and find out what's going on. Maybe it's legit, maybe it's not legit. But if somebody starts asking you to give up a whole bunch of information without really framing what's going on here, especially if they say, oh, somebody's fraudulently using your card, I need to verify you. Could I have your Social Security number, mother's maiden name, etc. You know this is a problem. They're going to try to scare you. So you need to control your information. Everything that we're talking about today, all of these problems, no one is going to protect you. Okay, the bank is not going to protect you. The credit card company is not going to protect you. The government is not going to protect you. You need to take steps to protect yourself, and that's the reality of our situation. And we'll talk more about that too. Shred stuff. Everybody have a shredder? Quick poll for the people in the room. I see you. No shredder. 2 out of 3 in the room have a shredder. Shred stuff. You can even sit there and rip it up into little strips. Nobody's going to sit and put it. Again, this is an economic crime. So if you think about, well, yeah, if I shred the paper, somebody could sit there with glue and put it all back together. They could, but that's not worth it. Unless you make phenomenal amounts of money, it's probably not worth somebody going through your dumpster and taking all the shreds and putting them back together. So for the vast majority of people, shredding them is a great thing to do. And everything, we talked about the pre-approved credit card offers before. Absolutely, shred them. Stuff that's coming in your kids' names, shred it. Deceased parents, if you're getting stuff like that, shred it. Absolutely, you don't want that stuff floating around. You want to really What we talk about in the information security game is we talk about an attack surface. That means like the total amount of stuff. Like at Fairview, we think about all our applications and various kinds of remote access, and all those things make our attack surface. You have a personal attack surface, and it consists of lots of papers and numbers. So get that as small as possible. Yeah, anything with numbers on it. Oop, I pressed the wrong button again. So how many people carry, again, informal poll, more than 5 credit cards with them everywhere they go all the time? Nobody in this room?
No.
Anybody on the phone? More than 5?
No.
3? Good
No.
number? Okay.
No. No.
Anybody carry their social security number or a social security card with them?
No.
Passport? No. Good.
No.
Good. Don't. Carry only what you need. And here's a little tip. Make a copy of all the stuff front and back. Get the card numbers, get the phone numbers, so that if or when your wallet or purse gets stolen, you immediately know who you got to call. And you got the numbers, and you got 2 or 3 credit cards, you got a driver's license, you got an insurance card, you got a AAA card, whatever, front and back, you can knock that out really easy. And then worst case, you suddenly find, oops, there's my purse, right where I left it. Okay, so now you've only got a couple of cards to replace it. It's not the end of the world. But if you're carrying, especially all those, every department store, right, wants you to have one of those individual cards. I mean, you could easily amass 20, 30 or more cards. And if you've got them, okay, well, that's, you do what you do. Keep them in a safe place. Don't carry them with you everywhere you go. Here we go. Online, right? We said that a lot of this happens physically in real life, but plenty happens online too. So you need to be careful. Don't email personal information ever. Fairview Help Desk will never send you an email asking you for your password. Nobody, no legitimate organization should ever send you an email asking for your password or asking for other personal information. If you get something like that, it's almost certainly a scam. Be very careful. Email, effectively, you should not put anything in an email that you would not put on the back of a postcard. And that's the reality of where we are now. Yes, there's encrypted email, there are methods, so we do have the ability to email PHI when there's a business need to do so, and we have some specific channels that you can do that for your internal work. But in your regular life, be really stingy with that information. Passwords.
Can I ask a question?
Jump right in.
What about something like Google Drive and putting personal documents on that, and then you choose who you want to share that with, but
Yep. I would still be really careful.
And could you all hear the question?
Oh. The question was about Google Drive. So if you have Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, there's a million of them out there. Dropbox is not a good choice. We are rolling out here at Fairview. We will be rolling out something called ShareFile in the near future for business use, fully encrypted, all kinds of controls. We can audit it, and we can control not only who and what information gets put out there, but who gets to have access to it. So that's really exciting. That'll be coming second quarter-ish. But for personal stuff, again, be careful with it. It's, we've basically already trusted our entire lives to Google anyway, right? I mean, Google and Apple, between the two of them, they have every piece of information about us, and they already know. They know more about you than you know about you, because they can correlate with big data and that kind of stuff.
Hey, Barry?
Yeah, oh, question. Yep.
Yeah, this is Dave Anderson. I know that the Google policy is if you were to upload a document with that kind of list of passwords, it actually violates their terms of service, and they will lock your account. But that doesn't make it a secure.
Right.
That doesn't really change whether it's a secure or insecure password.
Yep.
Practice. So my question for you is: are we Fairview planning to implement some type of password vault software or architecture that will be accessible from Fairview employees from, say, wherever they happen to be within Fairview?
Yes. You probably want details too. Yes, coming to a computer near you soon. We've actually got it in place. We're just figuring out rollout plans. It's part of a big rollout where I don't want to get too far ahead of things or off topic, but we're going to be having badge login, tap and go login for clinicians, the people that have to log in 50, 60 times a day and hate security every time they have to type in a password. We're actually testing that at Lakes as we speak, so if there's anybody here from Lakes, that will be coming by the end, okay, I don't want to make any promises. Soon, Olive Lakes will have this capability, and we'll be rolling it out to all clinical workstations in the Fairview network this year. And part of that will include a password vault. Now, we're focused on the clinical users first, and we'll come back around to the knowledge workers. So we'll have things like single sign-on, two-factor authentication, password vault. It's all coming. So very exciting. But to double back on both of these questions, so I wouldn't trust them. I mean, it depends what you're putting out there. There are better ways to do it, and actually, password vault is a much better choice. So it depends on what you're trying to do. If you need to share information with somebody else, so that's why you're loading up to Google Drive and opening it up to them, I sure wouldn't want too much personal information there. Because at the very least, all of Google, every Google employee can get to it, right? Every Google Systems Administrator can get to it, at the very least. Not to mention, do we trust their controls? I think they do a pretty darn good job. Let's not forget that we're not paying anything for this service. So there's a saying out there that you're not you're not the customer, you're the product, right? Who's paying for Google? Companies are paying for Google to exist. So stuff that you're putting out there is going into databases somewhere. So I wouldn't put anything personal out there. Personal password vault, we'll talk more about passwords in a minute, I highly recommend, and some awesome choices when you talk about that. But yeah, I would not put stuff out into those cloud vendors, and definitely not Dropbox. They've been hacked a number of times over, so I would not use them. Good. A couple of other quick things. You should all be using some kind of virus protection at home, highly recommended. Sometimes you get these junk emails and it says click here to unsubscribe. Don't do that, because then you just told them you're a live human, and then you'll get other stuff coming along with that. So just delete it and move on. Good. We talked a little bit about credit cards and statements. Something I like to do, so for online shopping, I'm a big proponent of online shopping. I've been lecturing about identity fraud for 15, 16 years. And back in the day, you'd ask people, so how many people shop online? And like 2 people would raise their hand, right? And then the discussion, the same people who were not willing to shop online were more than willing to hand their credit card to some 20-year-old at the restaurant who then disappears for a half hour, and who knows what's happened. And there are these portable card skimmers and they have in cases. In fact, was it P.F. Chang's? Somebody had an issue like that, where there were some specific personal card skimmers in use, where the waiter or waitress would take the card, skim it on their personal skimmer, collect all the information, go off, take care of the charge for the meal, bring it back, and you're all set. Or many people seem to be more comfortable with giving their credit card data over the phone, where you pretty much have no clue who you're talking to on the other end of the phone, or what country they're in, or what else is going on. So in many ways, online might be the safest way that you can use your credit card. But I recommend people use one card for online. So that way you know if it gets hit, because it's more about the personal impact, right? If the card gets hit, you're only going to be liable for a certain amount, which gets back to why we document some of these issues, to make sure that you're not liable. But you're going to lose the use of that card for a little while, and that could impact your day-to-day. So if you got one card for online, and that card gets hit, or when that card gets hit, okay, so now you don't have the use of that card for a week while they're mailing you the new one, and you can go on, you can buy gas, and you can buy your groceries and do whatever else that you do. So this is more for your personal impact, and then you can sort of compartmentalize where different things can get hit. Old cards, you've got to cut them up. You've got to cut them up, because even though there's an expiration date on that card, there's other information on that mag stripe, and you don't want that out there. So cut up those cards. You get really crazy. I get really crazy with my old cards. So I cut them into strips, and then I kind of split them in half, and I take every other strip and throw it out in one garbage can, and every other strip and throw it out in a different. You do that too? Do that too? All right.
That was such a laugh.
Awesome. I like that. I like that. So for those of you on the phone, if you do that too, you know you're not crazy. Okay? This is good. This is good. I highly endorse that. I heard a technique, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like, rather than signing the back of a card, right, please ask for ID. Because it kind of makes sense, right? So the card has your name on it, and then they ask for your ID, which is your driver's license, which also has your name on it, and your picture, and your signature, right? It's like two-factor authentication practically. And yet some organizations, the sort of the robot behind the cash register says, I can't take your card if it doesn't have a signature on it. So Your mileage may vary, it may or may not work, but it's something that you could try. And then theoretically, if somebody grabs your card, they might not be able to use it, but then again, there's the gas station and on and on and on. So it may or may not work.
So Barry, with my new credit cards I've
Yeah.
done this, please ask for picture ID. I've probably used my credit cards like maybe 10 times since then.
Yeah.
Only once has anyone asked to see my ID, and that was at the US
Yeah.
Postal Service.
Nice. And so when somebody asks me that, I thank them.
Oh, I did.
And you can even say, can I speak to your manager? Thank them as well, because they should be doing that.
And someone on the phone had the same experience?
Yeah, I do the same. I mean, I've got please ask for ID on the back of my card. And when they ask for my ID, I tell them thank you for asking, that I really appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. Then, of course, that assumes,
Oh, go ahead.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I think if you look at the terms of agreement or terms of service or whatever on your credit card, that you haven't, by not signing it, vendors are not required to accept it because you have not validated the
Yeah.
terms of service. And so you do, I used to do that, and I had somebody actually decline to accept my credit card.
right.
A company, a large organization, a large retailer in the Twin Cities, refused to accept my card because it was invalid.
Yeah.
Well, and I had that same experience, so what I do now is make my signature extremely small as I can get it. And then add the please ask for ID in a slightly larger script, so that if they turn it over to look at that security code, they'll see both, and hopefully they'll ask, and a lot do, but a lot don't.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
That's a great idea.
I'll add that one to the list. Well, how about now, right? So most of the time you're signing on some kind of pad, right? Which is
Right.
typically vertical. And, we didn't grow up writing on things vertically. We write on things that are flat. And so, when does your signature, or how about if you have to sign with your finger, right? Rather than some kind of
Oh, I
stylus, right? That looks nothing, at least mine looks nothing like the signature that's on the back of the cards. So that's an interesting thing.
I had a vendor, or a cash register person tell me, just make a mark. And my comment back to them was, I'm not just making a mark. If they look at my signature and it doesn't match my signature closely enough, I can say that that wasn't me that signed that credit card charge. And so I make sure that my signature looks as close as possible as my real signature.
Good, that's all good. Of course, the minimum wage person on the other end of the counter typically doesn't care, and that's unfortunate. But and even with the picture ID thing, how many people look exactly like their driver's license photo too? so there's that issue as well. But no, it's an ongoing issue. Again, if we can keep our attack surface small and keep down our ability to fall victim to this theft, that's our best defense. Excellent, good discussion. That's what makes this fun, by the way, so keep the questions coming. Just really quickly, we're no lawyers, I don't know any lawyers in the room. We won't talk about laws too much, but I think it's important to note, Minnesota does an awesome job when it comes to, like breach notification. For example, a lot of people look at the famous California 1386 is the number of the law. Everybody in security actually knows that. But, so that was the first law on the books for breach notification. Minnesota's was number 2. So Minnesota does a great job here. So in 2000, we actually had an identity theft law on the books. For those of you that are interested, 609.527. And then we've also got the credit freeze law, Senate Bill 2002. And both of those have been revised, but that's really awesome. So this is recognized, and our legislators are doing things here. Question.
Our next one is a polling question. Would you just shout out either A, B, or C? How often do you check your credit report? A, you've never checked it. B, I check it when I think about it every couple of years or so. Or C, I check it at least once a year. So just yell out A, B, or C.
B.
B. We have some B's in the room. We have some, I think somebody said a D.
No D's.
I know a couple of C's.
I heard some A's and D's.
So Barry, is the correct answer C, you should check it at least once a year?
The correct answer is absolutely C. In fact, you can actually check it 3 times a year, because what happens is the Fair Credit Reporting Act says that you are allowed to check it once from each of the 3 major credit bureaus. So you could, so one strategy might be do one every 4 months. Because, you know, unfortunately, they're supposed to talk to each other, and they're supposed to have everything the same. They don't. Not even close. That's why there's even problems, like you talk about credit score, like if you go out to try to buy a car or whatever it is, depending upon who they hit, which of the credit bureaus, you can have a slightly different credit score. And sometimes when you look at these things, you want it cleaned up, even forget the fraud part. They might have your address as, you know, 4 apartments ago for you, or, you know, like you've been living in a house for 10 years and they've got the apartment that you had in college. So they do not do a great job of keeping this stuff up to date, and it's in your best interest, especially if you've got an established household with good credit, it's in your best interest to have this stuff up to date. Plus, if anybody tries to open additional credit or there's unusual balances and things like that, that should all be reflected in this credit report. So once every 4 months, you can go out and do that. And the handouts have instructions. So you can do that. That can be your homework for tonight. Go out and check your credit card, your credit report, and it is free.
Barry?
Yeah.
You can also put on your credit report that you want to be, I think you have to do it yearly, but you can put on your credit report that you want to be notified whenever any new credit request is made. My husband had a breach with school loans a long time ago, and the credit union said, well, the best way to handle that is that we have to call you whenever anybody requests about credit. And so we did that, and so when we've made credit requests, they have to call Bill and they have to say, yes, I made that application, or no, I didn't.
Yep, absolutely, and that's a great thing to do. That ties back to what we were talking about before, that Senate Bill 2002, the credit freeze law. That's exactly what that is. Now, it could be an inconvenience. You know, like let's say you're out at the car shop, you're looking for a car, and you and your spouse are both out there, and you say, oh, that's the car I want, and here's the credit terms I want. And then they call you, because they have to call you, but you're not home to receive the call. So, I mean, it could delay receiving credit, but you know what? In my opinion, that is far worth it. I mean, you know, because the opportunity for somebody to create new credit in your name that might be off your radar, that's bad. So, awesome for doing that, and I highly recommend that for folks. And you're absolutely correct. You do have to reestablish that every year. So you need to get back in touch with them. Well done. So, there's other reasons you can get a credit report too. So I said you can get one from each of the bureaus per year, so effectively 3 per year. But also if you ever get denied credit, or if you think there's incorrect information on your report, if you're unemployed, or if you're on public assistance, then you can get effectively as many free reports as you want. So hopefully none of these apply to you, and you're just getting the normal 3 per year. But it's good to know that there's other opportunities as well. So look at your bills, right? You know, you get these bills, and if you're like me, right, you get a million bills. But you really, you take the extra, I was going to say 5 seconds. It's more than 5 seconds, but it's probably extra minute per bill, especially those credit card bills. And just scan through them and say, does it make sense? Now, here's a tough thing about credit card bills is quite often the place, like you might even go to a restaurant, but the place where they process their credit card statements could be in another state. So you might be looking and say, well, that doesn't look right. I was not in New Jersey last Wednesday, but it's actually the restaurant you went to. And so you might be able to correlate where things are going on. But take a look, and if it doesn't make sense, call them. Call up the credit card company. They're open 24/7. And the credit card companies actually do a really good job of keeping their eye on fraud. Sometimes if you travel out of state and you try to use a card, sometimes the card doesn't, it gets declined. Then you got to call them up and say, I'm out of state. And then, well, they'll ask you a bunch of questions, but you call them, so it's okay to answer the questions because you called them. And I thank them. They say, sorry for the inconvenience. I say, no, thank you very much. You can also, and you should, if you're going to be going out of state for vacation, call up, take 1 or 2 credit cards with you, call them up in advance and say, I'm going to be out of town from this date to this date, so there'll be charges from during that time, from out of state. And sometimes they get confused. We went on a driving vacation over the Christmas break, and I said, well, we're going to be in Florida on these dates, but, on this date, we're going to be like in 10 other states because we're driving from here to there. And they don't deal with that very well. That confused them. So I just said, okay, don't worry about that. Here's where we're going to be. So again, minimum wage. It's tough. But,
Hey, Barry?
yeah.
Dave Anderson again?
Hey, Dave.
So you advocate, for example, or you talk about the scenario where you're out of state or even out of the country, and your card is declined, and you call the credit card company.
Yep.
Now, most of us are going to be making that call with a cell phone.
Yep.
What are the security ramifications of giving out answers to those privacy questions?
No issues. And here's why. And again, this is probably a bit off topic. The ability for somebody to wirelessly eavesdrop on those calls, it's technically difficult at this moment. It's not impossible. It's more at the, the spy level, the CIA and the NSA and the FBI. There's not really awesome consumer level spy tools of that variety available to the rank and file person. Also, they tend to have very short reach. So in other words, if I wanted to grab your information in that way, I would kind of have to be targeting you. Now, I guess I could go to a very, very public place.
Why would you have to be targeting me?
Well, that's true. Yeah, I'd have to be targeting a location. So yeah, it's certainly possible. I think all things considered, it's a pretty low risk. There are, again. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with what kind of encryption exists on wireless network, or I guess mobile networks is a way of putting it?
Yeah, and there are options. Both Android phones and Apple phones offer. You can, and I forget what the commercial name's for. They've got some encryption, but if somebody's, again, when I won't get too technical here, if somebody's impersonating a cell phone tower, which is what they would do, then they're going to have the ability to grab that traffic and potentially decrypt it, or if it's going in the
But they
clear.
don't need to grab the traffic, though. They can just eavesdrop on the traffic.
Well, that's what I mean by grab it. Yeah, get, essentially listen in. Again, it's not technically easy. Is it a risk? Absolutely a risk. Well, then, then use a landline or go to a different spot, or you call from your car. I probably wouldn't want, I'd be more concerned about the people standing around me while I'm saying this stuff into the cell phone than the odds that somebody is in there with that kind of technology grabbing that information. Now, that's going to change over time, right? There's going to be more and more opportunities. Wireless computer networks have more issues, especially depending upon what kind of encryption algorithms are being used, and there's more consumer level, inexpensive tools that a person can use to try to eavesdrop on a wireless connection than on a cell phone connection. But yeah, it's there. They're just very expensive, and they take a high degree of technical savvy. I think that's not, on the whole list of risks that I'm concerned about, that's kind of low on my list. I bet that's going to go, raise up the list over time. But again, I'm more concerned, and we'll show it in a moment. I'm going to slide on this. I'm more concerned about who's standing around me, who's listening, who's looking over my shoulder when I'm typing in my PIN on the ATM and that kind of thing.
So Barry, we have just run through time here.
We're rocking. Are we out of time?
We're just rocking. We've got about 6 minutes
Okay.
left. And I know you have a number of great slides left, but you also have some great handouts. So there may be a couple more slides you'd like to share, and then we can open it up to more questions.
Absolutely. Let's jump fast and see if there's some things. There's never enough time. It's all good stuff.
And such great questions we've been getting.
We talked about phishing earlier. Just very quickly, that's when you get these email messages, and they have links in them, and they typically, I want to show you a quick example. Actually, I do want to do this. They typically have some kind of threat involved, like your account's going to close. If you don't jump on this right away, you're going to lose your account. Something's going to happen, and they try to spur you into action very quickly. So I have a great example here, and this is an actual email that I received from eBay, and it looks all nice and everything. As you can see, it says final warning, and it says your ability to sell and buy on eBay will become restricted. So they're trying to scare us off, and there's a link on there, and the link says ebay.com, so it's got to be good, right? So, but as we learned about, and again, if you watched some of my videos and saw some of the blog posts that I've had, we know that we can take our mouse and put the pointer on the link without clicking, and look at where that link goes, and even that can be obfuscated. But in this particular case, it goes to a place that's not ebay.com. And if you did happen to click on the link, it doesn't download malware, but it gets you over to this form that has a beautiful eBay logo on it, because nobody could possibly find an eBay logo to put on a website. And it starts asking you for stuff: full name, street address, city, state, social security number, mother's maiden name, driver's license number. It gets better. That's all. I couldn't even fit the whole thing on one slide. From there, it's going to ask you for credit card number, full name on the card, type, PIN, bank name, routing number, account number, online ID, password. Hopefully at some point along while you're filling this thing out, you realize that you probably shouldn't be filling this thing out. But people click and people give up their information. So you have to watch out for this. And we've actually got, if you, again, follow my blog or look at, and we've got a link to it later, one of the last slides, the security intranet page here at Fairview. We've got a link to some phishing quizzes. We can go out and take a look at some emails and you can decide, is this real or not real? And it's kind of fun and it's really hard to tell. Fast. This is what I was talking about before. Know who's looking or listening or watching. So if you are talking on the phone and giving up information because you're verifying yourself, I'd want to know who's within earshot, and if you're at an ATM, who can see that PIN, and even if you're filling out a form, you know, somebody's cheating, nobody should be looking on somebody else's paper. So we want to be careful in those cases. ID theft insurance, very quickly, does not prevent ID theft in any way, shape, or form. What it can do is potentially provide resources to help you dig out. But it's important to know what you're buying. You've got to check into it. Some homeowners policies are starting to offer this as an extra rider, but just find out exactly what's included and what's not included. Most consumer advocates are saying that it's not worth the money because if you're phenomenally busy and have no free time in your day, such that if you had to drop everything and start dealing with this, it would be very costly to you, maybe that might be worthwhile. But again, look into it. And other than that, we talked about breaches before. I won't go into any detail here, but you know, just like we talked about before, Anthem got hit last week. Lots of organizations get hit, and when they do, they're grabbing password information, and they can go in and grab other things for you. And I've got information here on password self-defense. We talked about password vaults before. I'm a huge fan of password vaults. What that is a single program where you store your passwords and you have a master password that protects them all. Don't forget the master password, otherwise you're out of luck. You can store that information in the cloud, and the reason it's, well, I won't go into the technical reasons, but it actually is very safe because of the way they encrypt files. So they would encrypt my files differently, they encrypt your files. And again, this is an economic crime, so the attacker, it's not worth it for them to attack that password vault company because they can only get one person's information at a time. So unless that's a very rich person, it's not worth the effort for them. It's far easier to go steal the target database. That's way better. You get millions in one shot. That's very economically feasible. So I like that. Password vaults are good. And again, I've got some recommendations on the security blog and security internal page, so take a look at that stuff. We already talked about things that you should do. I think we're coming to the end of the slides, and again, my apologies for flying through here. That's just a recap of some of the things that we do. Be careful with your information. I think that's the biggest thing. Everybody's asking for your information. Everybody wants it because it's worth it to them. It's not worth it to you. You need to control that stuff. There's some handouts, and I think are they going to get emailed afterwards, or how's that going to work?
I'll email you out the PowerPoint as well as the 3 handouts.
Awesome.
Afterwards.
Everybody knows how to get a hold of me. This slide shows, so there's the information security page. Sarah Moore in Communications updates that, so there's all kinds of awesome information there. And then I've also got a security blog off the main intranet page. And like I said, just today I was posting about ID theft.
And so Barry, if people want to sign up for your blog, they can do it on the main intranet page?
They can. I think there's just a tab right off the main news page that says blogs. Click on that, and you can sign up. And if anybody's got questions, I am more than happy to just email me, give me a call. More than happy to talk about this stuff anytime.
Perfect, perfect. I don't know about everyone on the phone, but can you just tell the passion that Barry has for this topic?
We're having fun.
It was electrifying being here in the room with him. This webinar is being offered again in early March, and so if you would like to attend again, or especially if you know people that it would be useful for, and when I say that, it's really anyone should really attend this webinar, please refer them. The slide that's up right now is just a mention of our other webinars that are being offered.
Right, and we are videoing, so theoretically we'll have a video copy of this out as well.
Yes. So what we do have 1 minute left. So any additional questions for Barry? Did you find the information useful?
Yes, oh, yes, very much so.
It was just
I
amazing.
have a question.
Yeah.
I have one question. What about the like the small little piece of machinery that you carry sometimes, where it just gives you a rolling number that you put in for a password? Are those usable still?
Oh, those are awesome. Yeah. So what you're talking about there is what we call a fob for two-factor authentication. We will also be rolling that out within Fairview as well. So coming to a remote access site near you soon. We want to have Because here's one of the problems with passwords, right? No matter how good your password is, no matter how often you change it, unless you change your password every single day, if somebody gets a hold of your password, they log in as you, and you're out of luck. So what these do is they're time encoded. Well, there's a couple of different ways they work, but for the sake of argument, we'll say they're time encoded. So you put in your user ID and password, and then you look at the number on the little fob, and you add that in, and that's only good for one login. So that's great, because then if somebody steals your user ID and password, they can't log in as you. So we will be rolling that out. There's smartphone apps that do that. Now, most brokerage houses, most banks, and even Twitter, Facebook, eBay, PayPal, they all offer this now. Sometimes they call it two-step authentication. Gmail offers it. They might call it two-factor authentication, two-step authentication, there's lots of names for it. It's a good thing. It could be a hassle, right? It's an extra step to take, but I highly recommend it. That is the correct solution.
Great,
Okay, great.
great question. Any other questions? Well, Barry,
Awesome.
thank you so much. What great information, and I know as a victim, I hate to call myself a victim, it was incredibly helpful, especially when you were talking about the law in Minnesota for identity theft. In my case, the thief, as I call her, lifted several wallets in different locations, and so they put them all together to make it a bigger case, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately. So Barry, thank you very much. I hope I don't have to ever contact you again for another situation of identity theft, but I guess life could be worse.
Absolutely.
So Barry, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.